Hello, everyone.
Hi, welcome to Left and Correct, the film.
Only podcast and video.
It's not the only podcast.
The only podcast and video where both of us are left.
But only one of us is correct.
There you go. Every other podcast, everybody's left, or nobody's left, or everybody's
no one's
right
correct.
And left.
Everyone's got opinions that are never right. But if they are right, no one's correct.
I've never met anyone except for you who sometimes has a correct opinion.
No, I'm always correct.
Well, I mean, I was going to say I'm always correct. And our producer, Jesus.
He's always correct.
Yes,
always correct.
I am.
Always.
Goodbye.
Yeah. He is.
Completely correct all the time.
Yes.
Well, yeah, we're trying out a new little video thing for our babies, for our hundreds of fans.
Yeah, because we still can't really meet up because of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Nobody
can. You can march in the streets, but you can't corona in the sheets,
I every night I say a little prayer for everybody out on the streets, and I'm like, just be careful, keep your mask on, stay hydrated, rest up, get some hand sanitizer,
Yeah.
It's amazing what everyone is doing, and like literally putting their life on the line for justice and equality. But then I'm like, oh, I don't want to see in 2 weeks people getting sick. Oh, that would break my heart.
Well, it could happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody knows. I mean, we didn't know before. I don't think we know now. It's hard to try to be correct on an issue when it just changes all the time and there's no real good data, right?
Or, the data that you have keeps changing.
Data that you have keeps changing all the time. Just like, our society's changing all the time. Oh, it's 7 o'clock.
It's 7 o'clock.
I hear the toot and I hear the honking.
So Tuesday night, I went out and I went to a protest in Times Square, and there were tons of people, nurses and doctors, who were there in their scrubs, in their masks, with signs like racism is a virus, and that was like the theme, like people from the front lines on the front lines. And so that moment of 7 o'clock when that hit, I was like, oh my God, this is, they're very like humble because they're all doctors, they're just like, yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. And everyone's like, oh my God. Yeah, it was quite something.
That's so nice. Was that before the curfew? Did the curfew start on Wednesday?
It started Tuesday. Tuesday was when it got moved up to 8. So this was right at 7. And then I left shortly after that because I just, I did anyway. But then I noticed as I was leaving, the police presence was increasing and setting up barricades and making sure that, and then like by the time I got home, I was seeing online that they weren't allowing people to get into the subway to get home. So it's like, people are trapped. They can't be home before the curfew. And so
Adrian, let's hold on till that beeping stops because it's real crazy.
Oh yeah, my neighborhood is serious.
Well, at least that guy's serious. So I'm sorry, I couldn't. Nope, let's still wait.
Yeah, it's. One time I was talking to my mother and she's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "It's 7 o'clock." She's like, "What do you mean?" Yeah.
Still 7:03 by my count.
This goes on.
Does it always honk at exactly 7 o'clock, or is it?
Yeah. Because it's 7, like clapping for the essential workers, but my neighbor likes to get his horn and just go.
Oh, it's not a car. It's someone out the window.
It's like yeah, and it's been like this for weeks, months.
I'm sorry. I love doctors, but that's annoying. Okay.
You get used to it. To it.
Oh my goodness.
And what was it? Yesterday, I think. No, it was Monday. Monday after Trump had gassed everybody. Like the honking wasn't as enthusiastic. It was like. All right, it stopped.
It stopped. So you were telling me you were down there, and then the police were not letting people into the subway to go home.
I mean, I got into the subway, but by the time I got home, it seemed like, particularly on the one train or like at Columbus Circle specifically, they had blocked it off so people couldn't get on. So, which forces people to be on the streets and they can't get home. So then they are harassed and targeted by the police. You know, but so many people have defied the curfew because they're literally walking the streets saying, fuck your curfew.
As they should.
Yeah. Sorry for swearing, but that's literally what they're chanting.
Yeah, sorry, Mom.
So that's where we're at. You know, it's
ridiculous. You know, I'll tell you. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something?
Oh, it's wonderful to see.
It is wonderful to see. As the dictator says, we love to see it. But isn't that one of his phrases? We love to see it. We love to see it. Trump.
Oh, I'm sure he says stupid things. So sure.
I thought that was one of his phrases, isn't it? We hate to see it or we love to see it.
I don't. Maybe.
Anyways, I lost my train of thought in that back and forth.
Curfew.
People are past the curfew. Oh, I was going to say, you know, here's something that I have never, even in my political activation, gotten super into. I mean, I did vote every time, although I don't know why, is the New York City mayoral election. And primarily, I never really cared much because it's always such a shoo-in, usually. I mean, for most of my life, I moved here under Giuliani, and then we had Bloomberg for 3 terms.
Right.
That's most of my time in New York City, 16 years.
Yeah.
And then now we've got DiLamesio. I can't remember who I voted for. I think I voted for him, but I don't even remember the election.
I didn't vote for DiLamesio. I went third party with DiLamesio.
Really?
I did.
All right, more sirens. Hold on. Where do you live? Where do you live in a hospital zone?
Well, I'm like a couple blocks down from New York Presbyterian, so look, I don't know what's going on, guys. The sirens, like beginning of coronavirus, the sirens were all day, like throughout the day. It was really debilitating, and it subsided, and it was very quiet for a while, and then in the past couple of nights. But it's so weird how like I can now tell the difference of sirens. Like I know the difference between fire department, ambulance, and police. So I've been hearing more police sirens the past couple of nights, and yeah.
So I was going to say, I don't remember who Bill de Blasio ran against. I don't remember who I voted for. But I do remember that one of his big selling points were 2 parts. One, that he has an African-American wife and children, right? So he was promoting himself as a racial justice candidate, right? Like this, my family is immediately affected by this. And he ran on a big campaign of police reform, from what I remember. And it seems like he totally gave up on that. I mean, now you've seen the videos, I don't know, of the New York police cars running over protesters.
Oh, yeah.
And then him at the next day saying, like, the police are doing great.
Right. People should have moved out of the way. Like,
people should have moved out of the way.
What?
And then his own daughter got arrested protesting.
Yeah. But the fact that information was released was a breach of her privacy. So even then, it's like, who did this?
They doxed her.
Yeah.
As that's called in the internet world, for those who don't know, doxing.
Yeah, well,
to get at him, because I remember when he first came into the office, famously, his first big speech to the police, whatever, they all stood up and turned their backs to him.
That's right.
Just because he promised to stop them from constantly harassing people on the street.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was mayor. How long has he been mayor?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna say 6-7 years. I'm gonna find out right now.
So he was mayor when Eric Garner got killed.
Oh,
in 2014.
So he came in 2014.
So that was the same year.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would make sense that he'd be like, I'm here to reform, and everyone went, no. And then he went, oh, okay, never mind, sorry. And
so New York City, one of the most powerful cities in the world, being the mayor of the city, I don't remember what the statistics is, but I remember reading it or hearing about it sometimes, that the GDP of the city alone, the city's budget, is larger than something like 50 countries.
I believe that.
Yeah, so when you run the city, you are running a massive administrative bureaucracy and such, and you have a lot of power, not to mention like the cultural and financial, power that's in the city. And that guy still can't get the cops to stop shooting people in our own town. Like they can't promote something like every time a police officer kills someone, they immediately are arrested. Or every time,
because it's what is it, qualified immunity? That's the term that's in place that keeps these killer cops safe. And
he doesn't promote harming them.
I think for me anyway, this is just we have placed too much power on one person, whoever that person is, to fix everything. And they're going to let you down somehow. We collectively have to place pressure on the collective they to change the system. So yeah, De Blasio is a fucking schmuck.
Well, protesting absolutely can move very specific things. Like all these protests, we would not have gotten the cops arrested who killed George Floyd.
Right.
It would not have happened.
Right.
It took weeks for them to arrest the other three, and that's finally happened.
And here's the really twisted thing. It's not just, peaceful protests showing up singing Kumbaya. Responding with the language that they understand, which is violence, and so it's this, you need, that goes into a whole other world of, it's not even violence. The destruction of property, I don't see it as being violent. It's property.
It doesn't matter. It's matter. It's immaterial. It has
right. Like a building can be replaced.
I've said my whole life, and I'm glad you agree with me, that people only respond to threats. That's how I treat all of my friends groups. I keep them in line with threats.
This is, and for those watching, it is true.
It's true.
We're here out of terror.
Absolutely, you are.
Oh boy. But I will say, when I was out completely peaceful, and like I even hear like it was peaceful. Like, yeah, what people shouting is not violent. It's raising their voices. Large groups gathering is not violent. It is peaceful. I don't know. I think we should talk about how, like, when we last met on Monday, almost immediately after that, meanwhile in Washington, D.C., where there's been large protest gathering in front of the White House in Lafayette Square, out of nowhere, men on horseback start showing up, pushing people out of the way. They're tear gassed, shot at with rubber bullets, and everyone's like, what's going on? Is there some sort of like watching it live in the media, trying to figure out what's happening, while Donald Trump comes out and gives this like stupid speech about law and order and, whatever. But like you can hear the screams and the booms happening behind him. You're like, what's going on? And then he just, I can't. Then he just waddles out of the White House, and he like walking down with like all these other people in tow. And then he just goes in front of the church where there was like a small little fire in the basement. It's covered in graffiti that's like anarchy symbols, FTP. And he just like fumbles with the Bible like he's never held one before in his life. And then he's like, yeah. And like for a friggin' photo op. And all these people were injured, and it's just like, it's using
it is insane.
Strong arm of the law.
The only good thing about it is that, I mean, he made like a very dramatic part that will someday be in a movie. I mean, that was like the most ridiculous tin pot dictator showing that he can harass and violently harass protesters so he can walk and take a picture?
Because he was upset, I think, because he was pissed off that people were making fun of him because he hid in the bunker.
He hid in the bunker.
So he wanted to show this like force of like, I'm a tough guy. And like do this kind of signal to his base of like, I love Jesus. See, I love Jesus.
Which is like, what? He didn't even run on like a religious, he pandered to the religious.
Right. But they've all created this, people are cheering outside. Are people cheering where you are?
I closed all my windows because I'm a good reporter. Okay.
Well, hey. But
I can't tell.
So, but the religious right, like they have, and this is something I don't understand because I don't travel in these circles, but like these people who believe that he really is like the chosen one by God or perhaps the second coming, and he will restore Christ and God into the White House, even though like should be a separation of church and state, doesn't matter because we are a God-fearing country, and the city on a hill, and New Bethlehem or whatever it is, and it's like, what is going on? What? And so like that's who he's pandering to, because those are the people who were loyal to him, and that's what that was. But to everyone else who doesn't know that, they're like, what the hell? What is this?
Weird.
What is this?
It's so insane. And some other pundit said this, I didn't come up with it, but that they think that he really is just all id. And it's exactly
I think I've said that.
That someone made fun of him for the bunker, and he was like, well, then I'm going to send the military to scare people and walk down a street with military people protecting me, and I'll show them. I mean, in a way, it does. It's like he's showing them, like, look, I can kill people if I want.
Wow. That's his whole thing. That's what he gets off on. He's a sadist, and he's always been that way. Taking a full print ad page in, what was it, the New York Times or one of the New York papers about the Central Park Five being like they should be killed, when like. And then, like, all these years later, all this DNA evidence has exonerated them. But he won't say, oh, I was wrong. Yes, like, he won't. He refuses because, like, that brutality, he gets off on it. He loves it. And that's why, like, when he's given speeches in front of, like, cop groups and all these, different police academies and unions, like, he's always emphasizing the use of excessive force. And that trickles down. And these people feel, protected, emboldened, and the system that's already been in place for, since police have been introduced into this country, at least, and for like what their role is. And it's all just a part of the same sick cycle. And we've had it. We have had it. We've had it.
It's twisted. Well, listen, I'm an actual leftist. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a neoliberal, not a corporatist. I'm not a centrist.
Oh, you are such a corporatist.
I'm not.
You sit in your corporate and you corporatist all night with your other corporatists.
How dare you? How dare you?
And you take you flick your little neoliberal and you look. Yeah, and you look in your warmonger mirror and say, warmonger mirror on the wall, who's the neoliberalist of them all?
And I
see Hillary Clinton.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
I told you, I know you.
But I will say this is the first time that this has made me say, sorry, Mom, fuck Trump. Like, to do this.
First time. This is the first time.
Well, everybody else, they're living with their Trump obsessions. Hate Trump, hate Trump.
No, because he's a freaking neo-fascist.
Well, here's what I say. Policy matters. Calling him a fascist was unproven. If anything, he was lighter on war than Obama.
Oh, boy.
It's wild, but it's factual. If Hillary had won, we would have troops on the ground in Syria. We'd probably be still in Libya. But to do this to a protest, to do this is... it's not like I doubted it, but it wasn't proven that he would do pure authoritarianism. This is pure authoritarianism.
I've been screaming this for 3 years. I literally said that afternoon, have you not been paying attention? This is where we're going. And then he gets in front of he's like, and then like, you know, has Barr direct to like shoot everybody. And
I mean, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. You were correct on this.
I'm always correct. And this is the question.
It's just absurd. It's so unnecessary. I mean, to me, if I was the great leader, which honestly everyone knows I should be, if I were you make a face. You wouldn't vote for me if I was running.
I'd vote third party.
Well, newsflash to you, I'm running third party, baby.
Oh, well then, the fourth party.
But if something like this happened and I was in charge, I would be like, oh, there's very easy steps to de-escalate this. Arrest the bad guys. Get DOJ to take over the case so we don't have some kafloofle yokels out there who are racist doing the decisions. Go on TV, make speeches, say, I support you. We support your right to protest. We've taken all these actions. Here's a bunch of actions we're going to push through Congress. It would take 1 5-minute speech and everyone would go home. That's how I would have done it.
That's how you would do it?
Bam, bam, wham.
Okay. You know? 5 minutes. It's a type 5.
I would have done a type 5. British type 5. It would have gone down in history. Okay. It would have, next to the Gettysburg Address would be President Zach's type 5. Okay?
Well, this Gettysburg Address was shorter than your type 5. Just so you know. It was.
Well, I hear you, but I'm saying like there are so many easy ways to stop this.
But the powers that be don't want to. The powers that be want to keep, you know, like particularly like Trump and his, you know, his desire and his lust for like being considered a tough guy. Like that's his brand. That's what he wants. That's why he's all into like, oh, the bikers for Trump. Like he thinks that's what being a tough guy is, you know, or like the police are for Trump, the military are for Trump. You know, it's just not that. I mean, of course, any individual who serves or whatever it is, but like to him, it's like, yeah, like he's a coward. He is an absolute textbook definition of a coward. Never served, never had any sense of empathy or compassion or any sense of anything else other than how it serves him and his own greed. And it's immediate and there's no long-term strategy here. It's just what satisfies me now. And something like this is just another step towards that, you know.
Well, that's very interesting because that's the thing I try to figure out is with this situation, who benefits? Obviously, yes. I think the protesting started because of the original event, but then for it to continue, then I start asking who benefits. So your theory is it's just personal with Trump. It's just his personality.
I think it's because, I mean, I saw the Trump store online is selling like MAGA hats in camo, and the email that was blasted out to these people is like, oh, sign up here, you could be a member of Trump's army, and you want to fight the liberal mob and Antifa and like all this stuff. Like this is, even though like in our circles this is about police brutality, this is about accountability, this is about compassion, this is about Black Lives Matter, to these people they want to start a war. And or like this idea of a war. And like, remember last month we had all of these protests of all these like angry white dudes with AR-15s. Like they haven't come out yet, but you know, it's like kicking a beehive. At some point it's going to bust open, and then what are we going to do? So it's one of those things where like I keep my eye on that going, oh, what? There is no Antifa. It's not real. But
Antifa is definitely not real, and that's a very ridiculous thing to come out to designate a terrorist group.
But tell that to a Republican. Tell that to anybody who watches Fox News. Tell that to anybody who's like, stuck in this loop for like QAnon conspiracies or like stuff I don't really know much about.
Well, that's
QAnon,
something that maybe you and I have done a disservice to the show by not spending time
talking about QAnon.
Well, no, like watching Fox a little bit, watching MSNBC, watching C-SPAN. Because actually, since I stopped, when the primary stopped, we talked about this in the past, I was watching all these channels specifically to get different viewpoints, and I've stopped doing that. So I actually don't know. I've read a couple of times that Fox is showing this as like a liberal war.
Yes, yeah.
But I haven't seen it.
But I will say, like, CNN and MSNBC I've actually been very, like, okay, like, their tone in all of this, I think, has been so much better than it was during Ferguson, and, like, showing the humanity of George Floyd and, like, talking to his family and, like, showcasing these protests and always saying these are peaceful and the people, following the protests in the streets of New York being like, everything was cool until the cops showed up. Like, they've been very, overall, I'd say, I think have been handling it well, considering that but at the same time, they're like, police got to do their job. And it's like, no, you're so close. You're so close.
Well, they're corporatists. They represent property. They represent.
Corporatist knows a corporatist.
How dare you?
How dare you? So it's like, so I was just getting back to like Trump. I think for him, it's just about creating chaos so they can retain power in that vacuum. I think this might, the problem, of course, with people being very reactionary to Donald Trump just as a person has been like, it's going to be Hitler. It's Hitler, this, that, and the other thing. So Reichstag fire is something that has been thrown out over the past 3 years. Like, is this it? Is that it? Like, this is literally it. There were actual literal fires that were set ablaze by mysterious parties. We don't know. Other mysterious parties are being blamed for it. And what happens in that vacuum is reinstating the Insurrection Act, or, bringing in, prison guards from Texas and dressing them up as paramilitary to set up in front of the White House to create this heightened level of like, we are under threat.
And many military people denounced that because it's illegal. Yeah. The government can't have a secret police force, a secret military. I mean, not to say that we don't have it in a different capacity, but you can't just have people who are not registered with no badge and no identification.
But because everything has been this erosion of norms, this erosion of what has been acceptable, like no matter who comes out, like Mattis yesterday, General Mattis, who was the Secretary of Defense.
I think so, but I'd have to look.
But he left, and then like yesterday released a scathing indictment of Trump and what had happened. But it's like, bro, you're like 3 years too late. So it's like all of these people are like Murkowski from Alaska. She's like, this is unacceptable. Really? Like, you knew he was a bleep hole,
Well, yeah, people knew he was a bleep hole, but I don't think people actually believed that he would take authoritarian actions. And
everyone did. Everyone who's been paying attention to who this man is knew this is what was going to happen. I think
it's still in the land of hyperbole. Like you said, like because the world, you touched on it, and it was very true that the discourse has eroded because MSNBC immediately is like, he's a fascist, when all he did all he did was like go like booga booga or something.
No. Mainstream media has been very like, let's talk about, is it okay to do Nazis have points? And it's like, what the fuck? It's more, if you look on Twitter, there'll be people who are like, hey, I'm a historian and I have a PhD in authoritarian regimes and how they are established and how they come to power and the things that happen. And it's happening now. And this is from like 4 years ago. And the same people are then like, sharing it again, being like, hey guys, so it's, if you're,
I'm gonna tell you, it still feels hyperbole to me because I don't.
Well, because you're not watching the news. You just admit, you're not watching the news.
Well, because that news is probably what's riling you up to believe that this is happening.
No, I just need to watch.
But
this is the thing. I just need to watch it.
I'm not watching the mainstream media. I am reading the news still, and I do know things are happening, but I'm not watching like what Fox and MSNBC are saying.
Right. Yeah.
But I had another point before I lost it again. Yeah, well, certainly when it comes to him taking over the country, I have to say that still, in my mind, is in the realm of hyperbole, because I don't believe the military would go for him, because there's not been any inciting incident. Oh, I know what I was going to say before. Well, you were talking about outside groups causing issues. I believe 100% that that's the FBI. That they use. It's very well known. It's very established that they have a training program. It's called, I'm going to pronounce it super wrong, but Contellenpro. And it is literally, it's been going on since the 60s. They discovered this formula that if you start causing looting, I'm doing a lot of fingers, if you start causing looting and, stuff is burning down and windows are breaking, then the news can report on that. And the protest goes from being a peaceful protest to a riot. And then the people who are at home sympathize against the rioters.
With the establishment. But I think with this,
I think it's a standardized thing for them to do, not from Trump, from the standard security services that exist. And the reason they do it, I don't think is evil. It's that is a theory that they will then shorten the protests. Because then it turns public opinion against the protests, then less people will show up to protest. People will be afraid because they think it's violent, and they will be on the side of the establishment because they'll say, well, you shouldn't destroy those people's property. But luckily, because now cameras are everywhere, we have seen so much evidence of police showing up and throwing bricks and starting fires and cutting
police
into that.
Destroying things and oh yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? People can record you now. That's one of the best things that's ever happened to democracy.
Right.
So that when you talked earlier about outside people, I personally believe
you believe it's the FBI. I think I don't know. I don't know. That's an idea. That's a theory. I'm not saying it's one thing or another. I think there is justified rage, but I also think there are, people with various nefarious intentions taking this opportunity to do what they want to do for whatever their cause is, and who these people are, what is, I think, yet to be revealed. But I'm not saying it couldn't be.
Sure. And to be 100% fair, there's no way I can actually prove it. But I will say you can read about this training, this.
Oh, I don't deny that stuff exists. I know you're not
denying it. I'm just saying it could be that, and also that's also not to say, because part of the theory is that once they start little fires, it can change a mob mentality, and other people are like, oh, it's okay to break into stores, and it can expand. And I guess you'd say convert peaceful protesters into looters.
But I will say it's tonight's Thursday, and even like over the nights, particularly here in New York, like, yes, I would say it seems as though it was professionals, like connected, like, organized crime, what was happening in Soho, like in terms of going down the streets, and how well orchestrated it was. And, and then it moves upward and like, oh, Macy's was looted. Like, no, it's like just kids being like, you got to know the difference of what's what. And it doesn't, I think that because like the crowd of a protest is, there's nothing more supportive and like group mind and like self-correcting than a protest. I have never seen
someone start violence unless it was
no. And yeah. The only people who ever start shit are cops. Although I will say, I was at a protest where there were like the Antifa kids show up at the end, and it's like, what are you doing? Like that kind of thing.
I hear that.
But it's 9 times out of 10, it's the police. And so I think with that sense, I think like what happened in Atlanta that night when they like attacked CNN, like that was
I loved it.
That was wild to watch. But like
beautiful.
that hasn't happened since, because, you know, I think everyone's anger then, like, you know, quells for a moment. They're like, yeah, no, we can do this differently. Like we don't need to do that. Same thing here in New York. You know, people are just like, no, that's not what we're about. You know, and so, because I've been in many protests and like that's never happened. You know.
Yeah.
Ever.
And there is, like you said, there's a very communal. People seem to be even more. Every time I've been, people have seemed to be extra kind to each other, because it seems like there's this feeling that we're all in danger together.
Yes, yeah. There's a great camaraderie. There's always, you know, and even like the legal aides who walk along with the protests with like the yellow green hats, like they're there, and you know, you've got people who have, you know, hand out water. They have granola bars. There's people handing out flyers for their own, like, you know, project that they're passionate about. And it really is a wonderful thing to be a part of. But yet everyone feels like, I'm so scared, and it's so scary because the police make it that way. But, you know, it really is not. And like when I went on Tuesday, I've never been afraid for my safety. I've never been afraid, not in the sense of like, nothing's going to happen to me, but it's like that sense of bravery of like, no, I know why I'm here. Like, okay, but I'm like, I had coronavirus. I don't know, like what's going on? So I'll just stand here. Oh, then I'll move over here. Okay, I gotta go. Bye. You know, so it's like, but I'm here. That was, you know, I'm more concerned because you can't see it. Because you can't see it.
You and I have not gone out together. We should go. Maybe we should organize groups. I don't know.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Maybe we should organize a left and correct protest.
Ooh.
But we're getting to the end here, so I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
And thanks for everybody who's going to watch this.
Yeah. Thank you for joining. And keep fighting the good fights. There are wonderful resource. You know, Google's your friend. If you're thinking, what can I do? You don't want to go out. You want to, how can you contribute? You can donate money. You can even just like sharing what you see, like on Twitter, you know.
I think I was going to say that to wrap it up. Sharing what you see is so helpful, because what I was saying is that I don't watch the mainstream media right now, but our parents at home, our people in the Midwest, that's all they see. And so I feel like probably a lot of them are hearing it's just looting, it's just liberals.
Exactly.
And that's not the truth, and the violence comes from the police. And I think sharing that is important. And arguing with people on Facebook is important. I'm in a great argument right now. It's the best thing you can do. It's the best thing you can do. So anyways, till next time, I've been Zach Sommerfield.
And I'm Adrian Sexton.
And our producer is...
Oh, wait. Hi, I've been Jesus.
Yay!
And we have been...
Left and correct.